الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. Continuing the study of مختصر التبيان في آداب حملة القرآن الغنوي رحمه الله. We're still talking about some of the manners that the teacher of the Qur'an should uphold and have. So he continues on by saying, as for sticking and holding on, then he says to stick and hold on to al-wara'. Al-wara' is to leave off that which harms one's hereafter. Is to leave off that which harms one's hereafter. And it comes an authentic chain from Mutarrif ibn Abdullah ibn al-Shakhir rahimahullah that he said, the virtue of knowledge is more beloved to me than that of worship. And the best of your religious affairs is al-wara'. So al-wara' is from the best of your religious affairs. And it is to leave off that which is going to harm your hereafter. Al-wara' can be seen in many affairs. And you could practice and apply in many affairs. For example, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ الْحَلَالَ بَيْنُ وَإِنَّ الْحَرَامَ بَيَّنْ وَبَيْنَهُمَا أُمُورٌ مُشْتَبِهَاتٌ لَا يَعْلَمُهُنَّ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ. The halal is clear and haram is clear. Between halal and haram, there's unclear matters. فَمَنْ اتَّقَى الشُّبُهَاتِ فَقَدِ استبرأ لدينه وعرضه. The one who leaves off those undoubtful matters, then he has protected his religion and his honor. So from al-wara', for example, in those kind of cases, something is not clear to you, is doubtful to you. Then from al-wara' is that you leave it off. You don't know if it's haram or if you don't know it's haram or halal, but there's some doubt in it, you leave it because of al-wara'. Also, the Prophet said, دَعْ مَا يَرِيبُكَ إِلَى مَا لَا يَرِيبُكَ. Leave that which makes you doubt for that which doesn't make you doubt. So if you don't know if something of business dealings, for example, is something which is allowed or not, then from al-wara' is that you leave it until you're certain 100% that this is halal 100%. Well, many people, instead of doing al-wara' and investigating, they indulge in those affairs, and then they find out later on it's haram. And then they start asking questions, how do I get rid of this haram money? So from al-wara' is that you prevent yourself from falling into those affairs before you fall into it. Similarly, when it comes to speech and statements, then a Muslim should think about that which he's going to utter and say. مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا وَلْيَصْمُتْ. Whoever believes in Allah in the last day, let him say good or remain silent. If you don't know what you're going to say is good or bad, then from al-wara' is that you leave it alone. You leave it alone and don't even say it. For that reason, this is extremely hard upon the tongue. It's extremely hard upon a human being that he controls his tongue. For that reason, it comes from Ibn Abi Rizmah with an authentic chain that Abdullah ibn Mubarak rahimahullah was asked, which wara' is the hardest? He said, that of the tongue. Which wara' is the hardest? He said, that of the tongue. And Abdullah Mubarak is well known that the scholars said in the past, Allah compiled all means or all the affairs of good in him. He was a mujahid, he was give a lot of sadaqah, he was a scholar. All aspects of good were gathered in this man. And he is saying that which is the hardest is that of the tongue. For that reason, the scholars used to fear using their tongue and harming others. For example, the subject of jarh wa ta'dil, which we studied last class in Nukhbat al-Fiqr, that the scholars, they disparage some and they praise some. Some of the scholars in that subject of jarh wa ta'dil, they use very harsh terms sometimes to disparage a narrator. But Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he has a famous statement where he says, I hope to meet Allah and He does not hold me accountable for backbiting anyone. And what he intended by this was, as the scholars, Imam al-Dhahabi and them explain, is that when it came to jarh wa ta'dil, he used very soft words. He used very soft terminology to refute someone. For that reason, al-Dhahabi said, if you were to look at the speech of al-Bukhari in jarh wa ta'dil, and the wordings he used, you will know his wara' occurred when he was speaking about people. That he had wara' when speaking about people. Meaning he feared Allah and he feared that something occurred to his hereafter when he spoke about people. So he used to refute them and rebuke them and disparage them, but use very good terms, very soft terms to rebuke them. Because he feared that it would be held against him. Also, leaving off that which does not benefit you is from al-wara'. مِنْ حُسْنِ الْإِسْلَامِ الْمَرْءِ تَرْكُهُ مَا لَا يَعْنِيهِ. From the good Islam of a person is that he leaves off that which does not benefit him. That which does not benefit him. Other great meanings the scholars mentioned. So a Qur'an teacher or a student of knowledge or a scholar in general should have this characteristic of al-wara'. He shouldn't speak unless it's beneficial. He shouldn't do acts unless it's something that gets him closer to Allah. And also, he shouldn't be from those who indulge in people's affairs. Some people you find they want to know everything that occurred in people's lives. A student should not be like that. A student and a Qur'an teacher and a scholar should not be like that, where they try to learn about everyone's life affairs. Now some people, they mistake al-wara' and they put it in its wrong place. Al-wara' goes back to the righteous. First and foremost, it goes back to the righteous and those people who have knowledge. For some people, al-wara' goes back to their customs and their desires, and that's not allowed. Some people, their customs and their desires prevent them from doing certain things which are allowed in Islam, or may even be praiseworthy in Islam. But because of their customs and their desires, it holds them back. And you find some people who are fooled by the shaitan, they're falling into major sins and they want to have wara' from minor sins. An example of that is, for example, it comes from Ibn Rajab rahimahullah. He mentioned, as for the one who falls into clear haram and he wants to do wara', meaning stay away from that which harms us hereafter, in regards to something which is doubtful, then we reject that upon him. As Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he said to the one who asked him about the blood of a mosquito, a man from Iraq came to ask him about the blood of a mosquito. Ibn Umar, he said to him, they asked him about the blood, he said to him, they asked about the blood of a mosquito whilst they killed Hussein. They asked about the blood of a mosquito, but these people, they killed Hussein. Which one is more harmful? They killed Rayhanat al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the grandchild of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and this guy wants to care about the blood of a mosquito. So when you find that nowadays, the man is indulged in major sins. Perhaps he'll come to you and he says, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, that it comes وَمَطْعَمُهُ حَرَامٌ وَمَشْرَبُهُ حَرَامٌ وَغُضِبِ الْحَرَامِ فَأَنَّ يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُ. He says, I can't eat this certain meat slaughtered by this specific company because if I eat it, my food is haram, my drink is haram, then how can Allah answer my dua? But he deals in interest riba banks. He works in an interest bank, for example. He may be working alcohol. He may be doing something which is even worse. He may be doing something which contains has in a shirk and polytheism in it. And this guy, all he cares about is that food that he eats has to be from this company, not from that company. This is where shaitan fools regarding al-wara'. Shaitan fools regarding al-wara'. The one he leaves off that which is a major sin, and he's worrying about doubtful matters. He's worrying about doubtful affairs. Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyya rahimahullah, he said in the meaning of his speech, that if he does an obligatory deed or leaves that haram, that he does so believing the obligation of it and the prohibition of it. Meaning in our religion, we base stuff off of obligation and prohibition, we base it off of the Qur'an and Sunnah. If you don't have a text on the Qur'an and Sunnah, you can't say this is haram. Or you can't say this is 100% halal. Why? Because you'll be asked about it on the Day of Judgment. But some people, unfortunately, it goes back to their desires and their customs or their doubts that they may have. And this is not allowed. For some customs, you'll find that they say this thing is repulsive, but Islam permits it. Or some culture, you'll find that this thing is not allowed in their culture, but Islam encourages it and wants people to do it. So it doesn't go back to a person's custom, the affair of al-wara', but rather it goes back to the affair of deen, the affair of the Qur'an and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ upon the understanding of the Salaf of this ummah. So al-wara' is important for us as Muslims, the general folk, the Qur'an teacher, the Qur'an student, the scholar, all of them, we must practice this at times. For at times you're going to fall into a situation where it's doubtful. Do I go ahead with it or do I not go ahead with it? From al-wara' is that you don't go ahead with it. Then he says, as for al-khushu', al-khushu' then it is tranquility and humility. Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah, he mentions al-khushu' is a condition of the heart, wherein it has fear, al-muraqabah, and humility for the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then that khushu' shows on one's limbs. Meaning once you attain this fear, and this always knowing Allah is watching over you, and that you know that Allah is watching over you, and that you have humility towards Him, then that khushu' shows on your limbs. Then that tranquility and that humility will show on your limbs. Ibn Qayyim, he mentioned, the truth is that al-khushu' is a meaning which is gathered from exoneration, love, humility, and submissiveness for Allah. So this shows that a teacher should have khushu', meaning he should have some kind of tranquility and humility for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. He should fear Allah, and he should know Allah is watching over him subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for as-sakina and al-waqar, dignity, sakina is tranquility as well, and waqar is dignity. They have similar meaning. And Nawawi mentions as-sakina is being tranquil in one's movements and staying away from moving around too much with your body limbs. Meaning controlling your movements. You're not always moving around like someone who looks like he has some issue, mental disorders or something like that. He's still in his movements and he doesn't move too much. As for al-waqar, then it is in one's appearance. Lowering the gaze, lowering one's voice, going on his path without turning too much. This is from waqar, dignity. Meaning you're anta ala sha'ni. You're only regarding your affair. Your affair is you want to go somewhere, you go somewhere, you don't have to look at what people are doing, what this one's doing and that one's doing, looking around all over the place and looking at people. Rather, you are focused on your goal. Imam Al-Uthaymin rahimahullah mentioned that these three affairs, al-khushu', as-sakin, and al-waqar, they all have similar meanings. They all have similar meanings. For that reason, you find the definition here is hard to give in the English language. Now, one attains this tranquility and humility by fearing Allah and knowing His legislation and knowing that Allah is always watching over him and that he submits to Him, as we'll learn soon. As for al-khushu', then Allah praised those who have khushu', wal-khashi'ina wal-khashi'at. Those males and females that have al-khushu'. أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Allah has prepared for them forgiveness and a great reward. They're amongst those Allah mentions in that ayah. As for the scholars in general, then Allah mentioned in the Qur'an, قُلْ آمِنُوا بِهِ أَوْ لَا تُؤْمِنُوا إِنَّ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ. That believe or don't believe. Indeed, those who are given knowledge from before you, إِذَا يُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ يَخِرُّونَ لِلْأَذْقَانِ سُجَّدًا. When a verse was revealed to them, they will prostrate. وَيَقُولُونَ سُبْحَانَ رَبِّنَا إِنْ كَانَ وَعْدُ رَبِّنَا لَمَفْعُولًا. And they will say, glorified be our Lord, and the promise of our Lord is something which will occur. وَيَخِرُّونَ لِلْأَذْقَانِ وَيَخِرُّونَ لِلْأَذْقَانِ وَيَبْكُونَ وَيَزِيدُهُمْ خُشُوعًا. That these verses, they will increase them in tears and increase them in khushu', in tranquility. So this ayah, the scholars use evidence that the Qur'an teacher especially, or the scholar, should be moved by the Qur'an. He should be someone moved by the Qur'an where it changes his life. Not someone who's just doing it for money like we discussed last week. Majority of those who are teaching Qur'an are doing things like this, they're doing it just to attain money in dunya. The Qur'an teacher shouldn't be like that. His affair should be that he's trying to increase his khushu' and his nearness to Allah and the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his heart. Not to attain the dunya affairs and money by way of it. As for sakina, then the Prophet ﷺ encouraged it. He used to say, Ayyuhan nas, as-sakina, as-sakina. O people, have tranquility in your movements. And he said, Ayyuhan nas, alaykum bis-sakina. O people, upon your sakina. فَإِنَّ الْبِرَّ لَيْسَ بِالْإِيضَاعِ. Inna al-birr, righteousness is not by rushing. Righteousness is not by rushing. Be tranquil and go and at ease. Also, in regards to the salah, the Prophet, when he mentioned that when you come to the prayer, he said, إِذَا أُقِيمَتِ الصَّلَاةِ فَلَا تَأْتُوهَا تَسْعُونَ. When the prayer is established, don't come to it rushing. But he says, فَلَا تَأْتُوهَا تَسْعُونَ وَأَتُوهَا تَمْشُونَ. But come to it walking. And then he said, عَلَيْكُمْ بِالسَّكِينَةِ. Upon your sakina, that which you catch, then complete, and that which you catch, is so be it. If that which you miss, then complete it. And a sakina is something important for the student. For that reason, Umar radiallahu anhu, in an authentic chain to him, he said, تَعَلَّمُوا الْعِلْمَ وَتَعَلَّمُوا لَهُ السَّكِينَةِ. Learn knowledge, وَتَعَلَّمُوا لَهُ السَّكِينَةِ. And learn tranquility for the fear of knowledge. So thus, whether you're a student or you're the teacher, this class is not something which is fawda, which is something of craziness and movements and like that. Rather, someone sits tranquil and he studies, and the teacher sits tranquil and he teaches. So the sitting of the Qur'an teaching the student should be sittings full of tranquility and humility. And not should be that of that which looks like the markets with yelling and screaming and other than that. As for tawadu', then he says a tawadu', humbling oneself. The Prophet said, وَمَا تَوَاضَ أَحَدٌ لِلَّهِ إِلَّا رَفَعَهُ. None humbled himself for the sake of Allah, except that Allah rose him in this dunya and hereafter. Now this is an extremely important attribute or characteristic a student and a teacher must have, is being humble. Whereas he does not transgress against anyone, nor does he have self-amazement or fear better than others, nor does he have arrogance. Some of the scholars, if they've seen more than 3 people sitting in their class, they would walk up and leave. Why? Because they felt that their heart is going to get affected. It's not an affair that that is something that you have self-amazement by way of, or they have arrogance by way of. If you're teaching, then do it for the sake of Allah. And if you're learning, then do it for the sake of Allah. If you are stronger than your classmates or those who are your contemporaries, then that's fadl min Allah. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. That's the bounty of Allah. He gives it to whoever He wills. But a person doesn't have arrogance for it. Look what Allah gave me. أَمْ يَحْسُدُونَ النَّاسَ عَلَى مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا آلِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحُكْمَ وَآتَيْنَاهُ مُلْكًا عَظِيمًا. I did have envy towards people for that which Allah has given them of His virtues. If Allah gives you something, then it's a bounty from Allah. Allah gave it to you and He could take it from whenever He wants. So if you don't humble yourself, and you belittle yourself by not humbling yourself, being arrogant, and Allah snatches that bounty away from you, then the only one to blame, فَلَا تَلُومَنَّ إِلَّا نَفْسَكَ. Do not blame except for yourself. So tawadu', humbling oneself, is extremely important. And from the importance of it is that which is mentioned next, al-khudu', is that one submits to the truth. Al-khudu' means one submits to the truth, and this is the reality of humbleness. The one who is humble is not the one who walks around with his head down and looks as if he doesn't want to talk to anyone in the world. The one who is humble, the one and the truth is given to him, he submits to it and has no taraddud. He has no doubt in his heart when the truth is presented to him that he's going to accept it. He humbles himself for the truth and merely for the truth. For that is the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Al-kibr batrul haq wa ghamtin nas. That kibr, arrogance, the true arrogance is batrul haq, turning away or rejecting the truth, wa ghamtin nas, and looking down upon the people. Humbleness, being humble, is the opposite of that. You accept the truth and you don't look down upon people. Rather, what you look down upon is your own self. You look down upon your own misdoings and your own sins and your own faults. For that reason, the Salaf, they used to do so. They used to hold themselves accountable. They used to hold themselves accountable and look at their own mistakes and sins before looking at other people's sins and other people's mistakes. For you have sins yourself and you have mistakes yourself. For that reason, the one who is humble, he looks at his own faults and mistakes first. And then he looks at that how he can fix the community and the people. Not by blaming them or looking down upon them and belittling them, but by way of trying to cause islah, correction in the community and the people. So it's a must to humble oneself and submit to the truth, even if it is against you. And in reality, this is what many people are afflicted by. They're not humble and they don't have humbleness. And this is something which goes against the evidences. And the scholars there in the past, they understood this. For example, I mentioned to you a story, and this is a story well known amongst the scholars. And they mention this often for someone who should return back to the truth. Meaning someone who has a faulty fatwa, or someone who has a faulty view, him returning back to the truth in reality is fadila. It's a nobility and virtue for him. To return back to the truth is a virtue for him. But to remain upon falsehood, in reality, is a belittlement for him. Here he says here, in the biography of Ubaydillah ibn al-Hasan al-Anbari, one of the leaders of the scholars of Basra, and its scholars and scholars of jurisprudence, and he was a judge there. He said Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, his student, Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, his student, also of Shafi'i. He's one of the biggest students of Shafi'i. He said to him, كنا في جنازة فسألت عن مسألة فغلط فيها. That I was in janazah with him, and I asked him about an affair, and he made a mistake in it. فقلت له أصلحك الله القول فيها كذا وكذا. May Allah correct your affair. The correct stance is such and such. فأطرق الساعة. So he put his head down for an hour. ثم رفع رأسه. Then he rose his head. فقال إذن أرجع وأنا صاغر. I'm going to return back to the truth while I'm lowly. Meaning I'm lowly now. لأن أكون ذنبا في الحق أحب إلي من أن أكون رأسا في الباطل. That I be a tail in the truth is better for me than I be a head in falsehood. That I be a tail in the truth is more beloved to me than I be a head in falsehood. What a beautiful statement this Imam said. لأن أكون ذنبا في الحق أحب إلي من أن أكون رأسا في الباطل. That I be someone who returns back to the truth and be considered a tail in following and not a head in falsehood is better for me. And this shows the humbleness of the scholars of the past. Whereas nowadays you find someone, he makes a mistake and he stays firm upon his stance and arrogant upon his stance and he won't turn back. And he makes lowly excuses. Oh, this is how I am. And this, Ya akhi, Allah knows how you are. But as a Muslim, we have to change ourselves. We have to fix our manners and our affairs. It doesn't matter how you are. It's not an excuse in the front of Allah. I am like this and this, I'm going to be, and I'm going to I'm going to die like this. No. Rather, you fix yourself and you correct yourself and your affair like this Imam did. He should stay away from, then he says you stay away from laughing too much. Meaning you shouldn't laugh excessively. And you shouldn't laugh for no reason. But laughing here and there is okay. As the Prophet ﷺ used to laugh. Also, he used to smile, alayhi salatu wasalam. But that should not take one to being in a state of lowliness or excessive. Meaning some people when they laugh, it's excessive first of all. And second of all, people look at him and they say, he's just a joker. This one is just a joker. He's constantly laughing. And when he laughs, he's screaming and yelling. He's hitting his knees. He's doing weird things. That kind of excessive laughing is not from the characteristic of a student or a teacher of the Qur'an or those who want to learn the Qur'an. Rather, they should have, as we mentioned, as-sakina and al-waqar. They should have dignity, tranquility, and al-khushu'. You shouldn't be a person with excessive laughing and making too many jokes, as will come. It comes from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu that the Prophet said, do not laugh a lot, for excessive laughing kills the heart. Do not laugh a lot, for excessive laughing kills the heart. This hadith is authentic to the Prophet ﷺ. Al-Dhahabi, he mentioned, rahimahullah, that it is befitting for the one who laughs a lot and smiles that he lessens from that. The one who laughs a lot and smiles a lot, that he lessens from that. And that he blames himself so that it does not turn the souls away from him and become blameworthy. I mean, if he laughs too much and he's always smiling, people are just going to think he's a joker. And they're going to look down upon him. And it is befitting for the one that is angry and grumpy a lot, that he smiles and fixes his manners and looks down upon himself due to his bad manners. Meaning, always looking angry and grumpy is not a good characteristic either. He said, everyone that tilts a certain way from being upright in the middle path is dispraiseworthy. And the soul must strive and discipline itself. Meaning you must discipline yourself to be upright. Not laugh too much, not be angry too much. Be in the middle path. When there's times to be angry, then there's times to be angry. And when there's times to smile and laugh and be with those who are, and comfort people, then you comfort them in that situation and smile and laugh with them. Then he also mentions laughing a lot and making a lot of jokes is not something which a person should do, for it lowers a person's status. It lowers a person's status. As for joking, if it's excessive, then it's prohibited. But little joking here and there, then it's something which is allowed, so long as it does not leave the limit of manners and the way of the people of knowledge. As for jokes that are not appropriate or indecent, or you make a joke that causes hearts to be hurt by way of it, and you're basically making a joke against someone, you're attacking him, or like this, and not bringing about any good from it, rather evil, then it is dispraiseworthy. As mentioned by Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi, and other than him, rahimahumullah. He also mentions that laughing a lot, it brings down a person's status. It brings down a person's status and honor amongst the people. But the Prophet did make jokes. Ya Umair, ma fa'ala nughair. O Umair, to the brother of Anas, what did an-nughair do? Mean that small little bird. That small little bird. And they consider this to be a joke in the Prophet ﷺ. As for the narration of the Prophet telling that old woman that no old woman will enter paradise, and you find many of the khutbah and those people who like to make jokes, they mention this story and they say, oh look, the Prophet told old woman she will enter Jannah, old woman will enter Jannah. This is not authentic to the Prophet ﷺ. The narration, it comes from Hassan al-Basri, that an old woman came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, O Mashavallah, beseech Allah to let me enter the garden of paradise. He replied, O mother of so-and-so, no old woman will enter paradise. No old woman will enter paradise. So she turned away crying. So he said, tell her that she will not enter it as an old woman. Rather, as Allah says in the Qur'an, إِنَّا شَأْنَاهُنَّ إِنْشَاءً فَجَعَلْنَاهُنَّ أَبْكَارًا, that indeed we have created them a new creation and made them virgins loving, equal in age. This narration is from Marasil Hassan al-Basri. What does Mursal mean? We're in science of hadith. What is Mursal? Well, someone has to answer. As many of you guys are in the class. What's Mursal? What's Mursal? Sahabi is dropped. Is that the correct stance? Hamza. What does the Tabi do? It stops at the Tabi. If we say the Sahabi is dropped, why is that a mistake? Because kullu Sahaba udul. If we say a Sahabi dropped, it doesn't affect the chain. But a Mursal, as we mentioned, Al-Bayquni, if you remember Al-Bayquni, you're going to mention that the Sahabi, wal-Mursal minhu as-Sahabi yusaqat. The Mursal narration where Sahabi is dropped. We say that's not the correct stance. The correct stance is that a Sahabi to be dropped doesn't affect the chain. But rather, a Mursal is where it stops at a Tabi'i. And this narration is by Marasil Hassan al-Basri, meaning from the Mursal narration of Hassan al-Basri, and some of the scholars consider the Mursal narration of Hassan al-Basri to be the most weak of them. To be some of the most weak of them. So we'll stop with this much, inshallah, and continue next week. If there's any quick question, now I'll take now. If not, continue next. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any quick questions? Yes.